American Horror Story Asylum drew a great deal of inspiration from history, and many of Asylum's most unforgettable characters are based on real figures. While we're gearing up for Season 10, we'll examine each season's true crime inspirations. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, and you can watch the first episode about Murder House on the channel right now. Let's jump into Season 2 Asylum with infamous serial killer Ed Gein, the real-life Hans Gruber, and the abductions of Barney and Betty Hill.
Play with me!
Let's start things off with the main location, Briarcliff Manor. Set in the state of Massachusetts, Briarcliff was built in 1910 and served as the largest tuberculosis ward on the East Coast. In 1962, the Catholic Church bought the institution and converted it into a sanitarium for the mentally ill. The sanitarium was directed by Monsignor Timothy Howard and administered by Sister Jude, with Dr. Arthur Arden as the chief physician, and we'll get back to him later. Now on TV, Briarcliff may seem as a terrible place, but it pales in comparison to the real-life inspiration, the Willowbrook State School. Located in Staten Island, New York, Willowbrook was an institution for intellectually impaired children that operated from 1947 to 1987. And within that time frame, the goings-on were truly horrific. It's noted that by 1965, the institution held 6,000 patients, yet it could only comfortably accommodate 4,000. Many were abused, starved, and neglected. To make matters even worse, there are also signs of physical and sexual abuse on some of the children at the hands of the Willowbrook staff. Staff members were not required to submit a background check for employment. New York Senator Robert Kennedy once referred to the institution as a snake pit after a visit. He would call for a 5-year action plan to improve the institution, and the school would remain open. And just like its AHS counterpart, there were experiments. In 1956, patients were intentionally infected with hepatitis A to study the virus. The experiment lasted for 14 years before finally being shut down. It wasn't until 1972, when ABC News' Geraldo Rivera's expose Willowbrook: The Last Disgrace was aired, that the school's horrors were exposed on a national scale.
The doctor invited me to see the conditions he was talking about, so unannounced and unexpected by the school administration, we toured building number 6. The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible.
Not only did Rivera's expose receive national attention, but it caught the eyes of local residents and politicians who had no idea what was happening in their own backyard. It wasn't until 1987 that Willowbrook finally shut down.
You make furniture?
Lamps, mainly. I make the shades myself.
Really? What kind of material do you use?
Skin.
In Asylum, reporter Lana Winters is abducted by disturbed killer Dr. Oliver Thredson, aka Bloodyface. Portrayed by Zachary Quinto, audiences learn over time that the Briarcliff psychiatrist is actually a sadistic killer that beheads and skins his victims, turning them into furniture or using their skin and teeth to construct his bloody face mask.
I took her teeth.
In a season filled with demons, a killer Santa, and aliens, Quinto's phenomenal performance in Season 2 was easily one of the most disturbing characters of the entire series. And guess what? Thredson's crimes are inspired by a real person, infamous serial killer Ed Gein. Bloodyface, Buffalo Bill, and Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre tales echo those of notorious real-life killer Ed Gein, aka the Butcher of Plainfield. His crimes, all committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered national headlines after police raided Gein's property in 1957, where they discovered that Gein had exhumed corpses from nearby graveyards and fashioned trophies and keepsakes from their bones and skin. And just like Thredson on AHS, he would make masks made from human faces and various furniture items made from body parts. In the end, Gein confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and a Plainville hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. And it would be Warden's missing persons investigation that led to discovering Gein's House of Terror. On the morning of November 16, 1957, Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. Her son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, would enter the store that evening to find the store's cash register open and bloodstains on the floor. And investigators would soon learn that the last receipt written by Warden on the morning she disappeared was to, Ed Gein for a gallon of antifreeze. Only hours later, the same day, Gein was arrested and the county sheriff's department searched the Gein farm. From there, a sheriff's deputy discovered Warden's mutilated body in a shed on Gein's property, hung upside down by her legs and dressed out like a deer. An autopsy would reveal that she had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations were made after her death. In 1968, after initially found unfit to stand trial, Gein was found guilty on the murder of Warden but legally insane, and was remanded to psychiatric institutions. Gein remained in a mental institution up to his death on July 26, 1984 due to lung cancer at the age of 77. It turns out Bloodyface wasn't the only monster based on a real-life individual. Briarcliff's resident doctor, Dr. Arthur Arden, aka Nazi Hans Gruber, portrayed by the great James Cromwell, is in fact based on Josef Mengele. On AHS, Arden, who was secretly a sadistic Nazi war criminal, would terrorize his patients with cruel and unusual experimentation, leaving many of his patients as deformed monstrosities and sent out to live in the woods surrounding Briarcliff. Hans Gruber's real-life inspiration, Josef Mengele, was one of the overseeing SS doctors at the Auschwitz concentration camp, and was later lead doctor at another camp. Mengele led countless human experiments, including subjecting primarily twins to insane medical procedures. The experiments would expose about 3,000 children at these camps to disease, disfigurement, and torture under the guise of medical research into illness, human endurance, and more. And after the war and on the run from Nazi hunters, Mengele would elude trial for his crimes for years. And he would drown in 1979 after suffering a stroke while swimming in Brazil, and was buried under the false name Wolfgang Gerhard.
What is your name, please?
My name is Barney Hill.
My name is Barney Hill.
My name is Barney Hill.
This is Barney Hill, and yes, on September 19, 1967, he and his wife Betty reported seeing and being abducted by an alien spacecraft. At the very beginning of Asylum, Kit and Alma Walker were an interracial married couple who on one night hear strange noises and are confronted with blinding flashing lights before Alma disappears. Moments later, Kit sees objects in a living room levitate and is pinned against the ceiling by an unseen force. Over the course of the season, we would discover that this was the work of an extraterrestrial force. According to writer Tim Minear, Kit and Alma's story was inspired by Betty and Barney Hill, who were one of the first people to ever claim to have been abducted by aliens in 1961. The story goes, Betty and Barney were driving back home to Portsmouth, New Hampshire at night and witnessed a weird object fly across the sky, only to watch it descend and get closer to their car. Moments later, the two claimed to feel dazed and out of sorts when they arrived home at 5 a.m., and with no recollection of 2 hours in the trip. They felt dirty, their watches stopped working, Barney's shoes were disheveled, and Betty's dress was torn. And with the help of a psychiatrist, the couple would soon remember what happened with the missing time and reported that they were abducted by aliens. They would claim beings with large eyes had walked them into a metallic disc as large as a house. Once inside, the beings examined the couple and erased their memories. The Air Force would get involved and kick off an inquiry tied to part of the secretive initiative Project Blue Book that was investigating UFO sightings across the country. We could go on for hours talking about this story. Seriously, it's epic. At one point, the couple would be subjected to hypnosis by Benjamin Simon in Boston. After the hypnosis sessions, Simon speculated that Barney's recollection of the UFO encounter may have been a fantasy inspired by Betty's vivid dreams. Of course, the couple would reject his conclusion, though Barney would tone down his embrace for the strange event as years went on. To this day, debate continues as to whether the Hills were liars or just two very tired individuals who recovered some seriously scrambled memories. The Hills are referenced in several works of television, and their experience was widely publicized and became a best-selling book called The Interrupted Journey, and a 1975 TV movie, The UFO Incident. They even made it on an episode of Carl Sagan's Cosmos.
They said they saw mouthless creatures approaching who were not exactly human.
Barney?
Thanks for watching, everyone. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. We'll be back very soon to jump into Coven's true crime inspirations, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out.